It's quiet in Coronado. Ocean air, expensive silence. The kind that feels clean until you realize it's just covering something rotten underneath. And behind the tall walls of a historic waterfront mansion, a woman is discovered hanging in the courtyard. She is naked. Her ankles are bound. Her wrists are tied behind her back, and a gag or something stuffed into her mouth. And inside the house, on a bedroom door, a message is painted in black. She saved him. Can you save her? Authorities will call it suicide, but people who see the scene ask the same thing. How? How does a person restrain themselves and then kill themselves? And if it was suicide, why does it look like someone wanted it to look like something else? Today, we follow the facts, the timeline, the evidence that's been publicly argued for years, the official conclusion, and the reasons so many people refuse to accept it. This is the death of Rebecca Zahau, and this is a suicide scene that screams questions. Welcome to Tales of the Twisted, stories of the strange, the bizarre, the weird. A true crime podcast told in story form, where real cases don't just happen, they haunt. And this one still hangs in the air. The address is 1043 Ocean Boulevard, a property known locally as the Spreckles Mansion. Old money architecture, bright California sun, a postcard view of the water. But in July of 2011, the house is not a vacation. It's a pressure chamber. Because 2 days before Rebecca dies, something happens inside that mansion that changes the emotional gravity of everything around it. A little boy falls. His name is Max Shacknai. He's 6 years old, and on July 11th, 2011, Max is injured after falling over a second-floor stair banister inside the home. The investigation into Max's fall is handled by Coronado police, but the emotional weight of that fall lands on one person the hardest, Rebecca. At the time, Rebecca is dating Jonah Shacknai. Jonah is Max's father, a wealthy pharmaceutical executive. Rebecca is the adult in the home when Max falls. According to reporting, she told authorities she was in the bathroom at the time. However it happened, the result is the same. A child is critically injured, a family collapses into fear, and Rebecca is left standing at the center of a tragedy she didn't plan, but can't escape. Over the next 2 days, Max is hospitalized, his condition is grim, and while Jonah is at the hospital, life at the mansion becomes something else. A quiet property becomes a place where grief is just building pressure, room by room. Rebecca Zahau was 32 years old when she died. She's described in coverage as Burmese American, but before this case became a headline, she was a person with a history, a life that existed far outside a mansion on a wealthy street. She had relationships, family ties, and a complicated emotional world, one that would become central to how investigators later interpreted her final hours. Official case materials released by the Sheriff's Department later referenced writings attributed to Rebecca that reflect intense emotional distress, questions about her future, her relationships, and the pain she felt in her daily life. Those writings became part of the state of mind picture presented publicly, because when authorities say suicide, they don't just mean the physical act. They mean motive, They mean mindset. They mean a story that explains how someone could end up like that. It's July 13th, 2011. Sometime that morning, a call goes out from the property. Rebecca is found hanging in the courtyard. The man who reports finding her is Jonah's brother, Adam Shacknai. And according to reporting, Adam said he found her hanging from a balcony and cut her down before calling 911. And the scene, what responders and investigators encounter, becomes the center of everything. Because Rebecca is not found in a way that matches most people's mental image of suicide. She is described as naked, with her feet bound, hands tied behind her back, and a gag in her mouth. That alone is enough to stop people in their tracks. But then there's the message. A door inside the mansion bears black painted words. She saved him. Can you save her? And suddenly, this case stops being simply a death. It becomes a question, a riddle, a scene that looks staged for meaning. In public reporting and law enforcement presentations, the rope becomes one of the most argued objects in the case. ABC News reported that one end of the rope was tied to a bed, while the other end led to the balcony area, where investigators described toe and heel prints and also a male boot print that authorities later addressed. The sheriff's department later released presentation materials showing evidence images and discussing investigative points, photos of the outdoor scene, the rope, and demonstrations connected to how the bindings could be consistent with self-application. In other words, she binded herself. Now, here's where the case splits into two realities. Reality one, the official conclusion. Investigators and the medical examiner rule the death a suicide. And later, after renewed scrutiny, a fresh review again finds no evidence of homicide and no evidence that contradicts the medical examiner's conclusion. Reality two, the public reaction. People see the restraints, the nudity, the message, the rope, and they feel like they're looking at a staged killing. And those two realities have been colliding for more than a decade. To understand why this case won't die, you have to understand the core question that refuses to go away. How could Rebecca bind herself and still complete the act? And investigators knew that would be the question. In reporting about the case, authorities described demonstrating a method where a person could restrain themselves and still manipulate the bindings, suggesting that Rebecca could have done something similar. That explanation, mechanical possibility, became a pillar of the suicide conclusion. Because if you can show how the bindings could be done solo, you remove one of the biggest impossible objections. But here's the thing. In cases like this, people don't just ask, is it possible? They ask, is it probable? Is it reasonable? Is it consistent with what we know about human behavior? And most of all, does it feel like a person alone or a person being controlled? And then there's the door message, because even if you can accept the bindings, you're still left with the question of the words. The message on the door is one of the most haunting details in this case, because it seems to speak directly to what happened 2 days earlier. Max falls. Max is critically injured. Rebecca is the adult in the home, and the message says, she saved him. Can you save her? That reads like guilt. It reads like accusation. It reads like someone narrating the tragedy turning it into a moral test. ABC News also reported investigators found a book titled Buckland's Complete Book of Witchcraft, noting drawings of a rite involving a nude woman with her hands tied behind her back, and something that fueled speculation in public conversation, even as authorities said witchcraft had nothing to do with it. And to be clear, speculation is not evidence, but symbolism is powerful. And this scene is drowning in symbolism. It's why people can't look away, because it doesn't just look like someone died. It looks like someone wanted the death to say something. Another question that becomes central fast: who was on the property that night? Reporting states that at the time of Rebecca's death, Jonah was at the hospital with Max, and that Adam was at the property, staying on the grounds, making him, in many accounts, the only other person there when she died. That detail matters because it narrows the emotional and physical universe of the case. It turns a sprawling mystery into a small, locked room question. And it becomes even more tense when you factor in what happens next. Max dies a few days later on July 16th, 2011, as a result of his injuries. So within days, the case becomes two tragedies: a child's fatal fall and a woman's death by hanging, ruled suicide under bizarre circumstances. Two deaths, one property, one family orbit, and an investigation that will be argued in public for years. So let's lay out the main points people keep circling without turning them into conclusions, because this episode is about what's known and then what's disputed. Number one, the restraints and gag. Rebecca is described as bound and gagged when found. That is unusual in suicide cases, and it's the first thing most people fixate on. Number two is the message. The painted phrase is real and documented in law enforcement imagery. The interpretation is where people start to diverge. Number three, the rope arrangement. Reporting described the rope's path and where evidence was found. Authorities say the scene is consistent with suicide. Critics say it looks staged. Number four, the emotional pressure after Max's accident. Authorities have suggested remorse and grief as the motive for suicide. And Sheriff's Department case materials include writings presented as evidence of distress. 5. The alternative theories. The family has long disputed the suicide finding and believes she was killed. And when families fight an official ruling, the story doesn't just stay in a file. It becomes a public war over meaning. One of the most chilling details raised in the sheriff's case review materials involves a witness statement. The sheriff's presentation referenced a witness who reported hearing teens talking near the residence and described a voice saying, "Help, help," later described as coming from up on the porch area. That kind of detail, whether reliable or not, hits the human brain like a hook because it suggests an alternate timeline, distress sounds, potential outside involvement, something heard in the night. But cases live and die on what can be verified, corroborated, and supported. And in the official review, authorities ultimately stated they found no evidence she died at the hands of another. That's the friction point. A witness memory versus investigative conclusion. A story versus proof. Now, if you're listening to this and you feel your brain trying to decide suicide or homicide right now, that's normal. This case forces the mind into a courtroom, but we're not here to prosecute the internet. We're here to walk the timeline, understand why the official ruling is what it is, and why so many people can't accept it. In 2013, Rebecca's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit, and that lawsuit gave the case a second life because civil court isn't about beyond a reasonable doubt. It's about a lower burden of proof, a preponderance of the evidence. And that matters a lot because public opinion often misses the distinction. A civil verdict is not a criminal conviction, but it can still move the world. And in April of 2018, a civil jury found Adam Shacknai liable for battery on Rebecca Zahau, resulting in her death and awarding damages to the family. Adam denied involvement. Jonah testified that it was inconceivable to him that his brother was involved. But the verdict landed like a match, and it forced the case back into the public bloodstream. The sheriff's materials explicitly note that the civil verdict fueled renewed public speculation, prompting a fresh review. After that civil verdict, the sheriff's department formed a review team and reevaluated the case, including theories raised during the civil trial. And their conclusion was blunt. They found no evidence indicating that Rebecca died at the hands of another, and no evidence inconsistent with the medical examiner's finding of suicide. That statement is one of the cleanest dividing lines in the whole story, because it means even after everything, even after years of debate, even after a civil jury, the official position did not change. So why does this case still feel wrong to so many people? See, here's the truth about true crime. People don't only argue evidence. They argue human behavior. They argue, would she do that? Would someone stage that? Would a killer leave a message like that? Would a person in despair create a tableau? And this case has one. A message, a ritual-looking scene, a body positioned in a way that feels like it was designed. And whether it was designed by a murderer or designed by a mind breaking under guilt and grief, that's the question that keeps coming back, because the message on that door doesn't just sit there as evidence. It speaks, it taunts, it demands interpretation. And that is exactly why this case became what it became. Not just an investigation, but a haunting. So what can we say for sure? Let's anchor to what's not in dispute. Max Shacknai was injured on July 11th, 2011, and later died on July 16th. Rebecca Zahau was found dead on July 13th at 1043 Ocean Boulevard. The death was ruled as suicide by the medical examiner, and the sheriff's investigation found no evidence contradicting that finding. A civil jury later found Adam Shacknai liable in a wrongful death battery claim connected to her death. Officials conducted a later review and again stated they found no evidence of homicide. Those are the pillars. Everything else, the arguments, the theories, the certainty people feel, builds on top of those pillars. So if you strip the case of its spectacle, what's left is still devastating. A little boy falls and the world tilts. A woman is found dead 2 days later and the world fractures. Whether you believe Rebecca died by her own hand or by someone else's, the aftermath is the same. A family shattered, a community divided, a case file that never really closes in the public mind, and a door once painted with a message now burned into the collective memory of true crime. She saved him. Can you save her? It's not just a sentence, it's a hook. And it's why this story still drags people back again and again to that mansion by the water. Because the scene doesn't just look like death. It looks like a question mark. If this episode pulled you in, follow the show and leave a review wherever you listen. It's one of the fastest ways to help Tales of the Twisted grow. And if you want more stories like this, cases that sit in the shadows between official answers and lingering doubt, you can find us at talesofThetwisted.com. Next time, we're opening another file where the facts are real, the timeline is brutal, and the unanswered parts refused to stay buried. Until then, stay curious and stay twisted.